Let me say something to that, because I think this kind of discussion, which has gone on for a very long time around, sounds a bit cynical in a sense. In fact, it's like the tragic situation of 1994 isn't considered even a violation of human rights. It has now gone into the background. Those who are responsible for it, those who are associated with it, are now talking about something else. According to them, the situation in Rwanda is that of human rights violation, even more than that tragic situation. I think that's what we are talking about. So,
well, just for example, there was Amnesty International wrote a report in the lead up to the 2017 election that talks about opposition politicians, journalists, human rights defenders being jailed, physically attacked, even killed. I
think you're interested in
forced into exile or silence. So I'm just interested in your idea of that assessment of your country.
Raising your views to the audience so that you influence them by what
the European Union sees itself very much as an exporter of human rights and a defender of human rights.
So why can't you let me answer this?
I'm very interested in
Otherwise,
your answer.
you are going to ask and then answer yourself.
I'm very interested in your answer. I'm giving you some context on why I'm asking.
You're asking and giving answer at the same time. So
please tell me, what do you make of this assessment?
I think it's just ridiculous, because there is nothing like human rights minus these things we are talking about. What we are talking about in terms of development. These are human rights. Development, schools, education, health, and food security. And, you know, when you see now the level of poverty has decreased almost by 60%. So these people, these human beings with improved lives, and participating in that themselves to improve their own lives, gets lost in what the whole list you've been spelling out as if, you know, what is in Rwanda is really hell. In fact, forgetting the hell that we have gone through, that we stood against and sorted out when you were there just talking about more or less nonsense. Because
do you reject the accusations, for example, from
Amnesty International? It's rubbish, absolute rubbish.
You reject
Rwanda is completely different from what it was 25 years ago. In fact, maybe you need to be looking around in Europe. You are violating people's rights. When we have this problem of people being bundled and sent back to sink in the Mediterranean and so on, and so many people being mistreated in your own countries, why don't you talk about your human rights and stop just offloading everything?
Well, this is a development conversation, so no, in the context of development.
You are not the one to determine what conversation or what points to raise in any conversation. We are asking questions. This is what I'm saying. You are asking questions and you are giving yourself answers. You really need to stop this superiority complex nonsense about human rights. You think you are the only ones who respect human rights, or others it's about violating human rights. No, we've fought for human rights and freedoms of our people much better and more than anyone, including you people who keep talking about this nonsense. Where we have taken our country from and where it is now speaks for itself. The rest of the stories just comes from this complex. You know, these two worlds where there are people who know everything about human rights and all kinds of things, and another world where people are just people who don't know. But these are our human rights. It's not, when we respect the things we respect in our countries, it's not for you, it's not for anybody else, it's for ourselves.
Is it not
so
universal?
You don't sit there. Yes, it is universal, but you don't sit there. If it is universal and you believe it, then you don't become the judge yourself. You don't start telling the others what to do, what they should not to do, or that what they are doing is not to your satisfaction. Who are you?
Well, I'm not sure if we're talking about me personally.
Well, you are the one actually raising these questions. So I think you better interpret it properly so that it is well understood.
Okay.
I could see you asking questions in a manner that you want to influence the ones listening to us. But that's not correct.
Okay. Yeah. I'm raising it once again in the context of the United Nations Development Goals.
No, United Nations is us. You see, United Nations is not something alien somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's actually us. We participate.
And the framework for this entire development.
And by the way, I had been leading the Millennium Development Goals before Sustainable Development Goals. I was the co-chair of that, with other leaders and some of the leaders in Europe. So you don't turn around, it's like you want...
So you believe that there should be scrutiny on human rights in Europe, in Africa,
No,
in
I believe
countries?
that you shouldn't be there belittling Africans or leaders of Africa who are trying to...
Oh no, but the conversation about migration is a real conversation about human rights. So you believe that there are valid human rights concerns to be taken into account in this conversation?
Even in Europe, not in Africa.
Not in Africa?
In Europe. In Europe, not only in Africa.
Not, of course.
Yes.
Well, thank you both very much. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. President Paul Kagame of Rwanda and the EU's Development Commissioner, Neven Mimica. Thank you both for your time.
You might say, why is it that African leaders haven't done anything about this deplorable situation? Well, let me tell you, my brother and sister, they have tried. Documented to this day, 22 coups where leaders were assassinated. France had something to do with it. The first 7, when they decided they were pulling out of the CFA and that they're going to print their own money, they were assassinated. Every time an African leader has tried to do what's best for their country, they were assassinated. Majority of them aided by France. It's a known fact. And then others, they were just mercenaries who felt that when there was a natural resource discovered in one country, they wanted to create a coup. So while the country is thrown into a civil war, they're siphoning the natural resource. We know of one particular story that had we not known about it, it would have been, oh, there we go again, the Africans. In about 25 years ago, a group of young, rich white kids were having fun in Cape Town. They found out that there was oil in Equatorial Guinea that just been discovered and they wanted it. So they set out a plan to have a coup in Equatorial Guinea. So while the Guineans are busy fighting a civil war, they will be siphoning the oil. But they made one mistake. There were 2 planes. One was to leave South Africa, stop in Zimbabwe, pick up more ammunition on their way to hunt in Equatorial Guinea. Another plane was taking off in the Caribbean that had this puppet diaspora who was supposed to be the next president. Mugabe wondered why such young people needed such powerful ammunition to go hunt in Equatorial Guinea. In doing his research further, he found out that this was a coup in the making. He allowed them to land in Zimbabwe. They loaded their plane, and just before takeoff, they were all arrested. The ringleader of that group was none other than the son of the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher. She had to fly to Zimbabwe and paid handsomely to get her son out. The last one of those prisoners left Zimbabwe about 6-7 years ago. Had these young people succeeded, it would have been another coup. There you go, the Africans again. Such, my brothers and sisters, is the story of your Africa. They don't do coups anymore. They simply create instability. So when you hear of an instability in an African country, ask yourself, what is really going on? Because what they are telling you is really going on is just a shiny object. The real issue is over here. And you need to stop before you start being used as an instrument of your own self-destruction.